everyone. Welcome to yet another amazing, fantastic episode of She Sites podcast. She Site magazine is an international women's success magazine. Check out our magazine at www.shesitemag.com. I'm Dr. CV. I'm the host of this podcast, and I'm so delighted to welcome one and all for this episode of She Tycoon, where we feature wonderful women personalities, women leaders across the globe who are impacting in various industry domains. And today we have one such fantastic woman leader in the domain of hospitality. So without much ado, let me give a short introduction about this wonderful personality. So she has been selected or featured as the 100 most powerful people in global hospitality, as well as 25 most influential women in hospitality in 2022 by International Hospitality Institute. She has been previously the managing director of tourism at NEOM, the US $500 billion land of the future for sustainable and new way of living in Saudi Arabia. She currently also serves as a chairwoman of the Group Advisory Board at the Red Sea Global, which is a first of its kind regenerative tourism developer in Saudi Arabia. You might be thinking she's from Saudi Arabia. No, she actually travels across the globe and consults governments and bigger corporations on sustainable tourism and hospitality segment. So let's put our hands together and welcome Miss Aradhana Khowala.
Chandra, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Utter delight to be speaking to you.
Yes, thank you. So let's get started. Tell us about how was that little girl Aradhana? Where did she start from? What did she dream about her life?
So I grew up in Delhi, in India. So many of us, I'm sure you as well, sitting in San Francisco, Chandra. I mean, so many of us are in a place which is not where we are from, but then we grow up there. So we kind of don't know where we belong. And those are interesting life journeys and leadership lessons as well, right? So I grew up in Delhi. And I always say my parents were both immigrants to Delhi. And it's a bit tricky one because when I say this to friends, say, oh, but you're Indian and you grew up in India. I mean, how can you be an immigrant? But people don't understand that India is actually a very, very diverse country and a very big country. So coming from the South, growing up in Delhi, I grew up in an environment where we didn't look like other people or my parents spoke with an accent. But the leadership lesson in this whole thing is growing up in a place where I was an outsider, but kind of it assimilating into a very, very different culture very easily kind of came into me from there, I think. So I am instantly and very easily at home in most parts of the world. But I will tell you this, the older I get, when I was younger, I thought I could crack the world. But the older I get, I'm kind of realizing that the sum total of what I know is zero. So I don't know what I would have thought as a 10-year-old, but I can tell you as someone in my mid-40s, I don't know very much.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the process of maturing, I would say. Even I was like that when I was a little girl. I thought, okay, I'm going to become, or rather I'm going to do this and that. The whole world is going to change. But as we grow, we understand the complexities that it brings along, and also makes us humble enough to understand that we are just a little speck of dust in the whole planet.
Absolutely.
Right. So now let's talk about your hospitality journey. And you have established yourself as a big leader in that domain. You have traveled across so many different countries. You have given your advisory to different governments and other bigger bodies. So how did you I know you enjoy this journey, and you ended up in hospitality. But how do you see yourself as a valuable person in this domain, and what is that value that you are bringing to all these stakeholders?
So very briefly, my day job is that I run Aptamine, which is a strategy consulting practice.
Right.
And in short, we help leaders in destinations ensure that tourism is a force for good. We work in 75 odd countries, as you said in your intro, and we operate at the nexus of climate change, really benefiting the local community and putting gender equality at the forefront of any destination strategy. And we do all of that with a very rigorous lens of impact.
Mm.
But I like to think of what I do or what we do as an organization as part crusaders, part activists,
Mm.
part storytellers, and part doers, because it's all good to talk, but it's not good enough to just talk, but you really need to kind of
Do it.
demonstrate how exactly how tourism can be a force for good.
Mm.
So my early career was spent in fairly large corporations. And I always felt
Mm.
kind of restricted by what you can do, what you can say, and the overall mandate, which, in my opinion, at the time was rather cookie cutter. So I think Aptermind, the start of my entrepreneurial journey, was one where it was founded with a mission to kind of close that gap and be truly independent and neutral. So we are talking about topics that really matter,
Mm.
including the
Yeah.
uncomfortable ones, right? So we are truly neutral. It's a private company. We don't have political links. We're not answerable to any shareholders, stakeholders, or any paid members. So I think that kind of allegiance is very important for me, to really be true to what you are and be authentic in what you're saying. And
Yeah.
we're very, very fortunate that we take on work with people who really resonate that vision.
Mm.
Um, and kind of you can then choose to work with who you want to work with, who are
Yeah.
really focused on unleashing the full potential of tourism as a catalyst of change and a positive force, so to
Right.
speak.
Yeah, I get that. The only question I have is, probably some years back, or rather, most of the time, tourism is like a great revenue model for any nation or any destination. However, when it comes to impact tourism, that's what you focus on, sustainable tourism. And I also read about, read your article on social impact as well, social tourism. Tell us more about those aspects, and how has tourism industry as such evolved through the years to reach this stage? Or do you think we are still there in terms
No, far
of?
from it. And look, we've had a great run over the last 20 years where this is an industry which has grown faster than GDP. So a lot of the questions that needed to have been asked was really pushed under the carpet.
Mm.
We now are in a situation where we know what kind of got us here is
Mm.
not going to take us any further.
Exactly.
And that's where we need a strategy which is actually going beyond sustainability,
Yeah.
because sustainability is also not good enough. We
Correct.
need a model which is going
Regenerate.
to regenerative, exactly, which is going to repair, regenerate, and add back to the communities that it operates in and to the people who are responsible for running the system.
Mm.
Look, I think for the longest time, tourism has played victim, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we can't do that anymore. We are responsible for 11% of greenhouse gas emissions.
Mm.
We are responsible for dumping a whole lot of plastic, 8,000 tons actually every year, into our oceans.
Yeah.
And given 80 to 85% perhaps of tourism in some form happens in the coastal areas, we're directly responsible, right? I mean, that's from a destination perspective, but us as tourists or
Mm.
travelers, we have a responsibility as well.
Exactly.
Increasingly, now I'm all for travel, don't get me wrong, because, I think it's helped us become more broad-minded, open, and all of those things. But equally, I think we need to make a transition to a travel where we are actually forging deeper connections and traveling a lot more with intent.
Mm.
I don't definitely mean travel less, but I definitely mean travel slowly,
Travel more consciously.
consciously. Exactly. I mean, so you regain a certain sense of balance and reclaim your sanity a lot more. It's become a bit like, tick the box exercise, where it's a form of consumerism where and there is ego involved there. I've been to X hundred,
Exactly.
100
I
countries,
think
wherever.
I think the social media culture has also brought in a lot of that. We see a lot of influencers traveling to exotic places. I mean, one way it is good, they are promoting and bringing in tourism, but at the same time, as you rightly said, people do things just for showing it to others rather than
Exactly.
enjoying that tourism.
And that's the beauty of travel, which you completely miss
Yeah,
if you just consume it at a superficial level. It's like going to a destination and coming back to the fridge magnet, right?
correct,
And
exactly.
that's really terrible. I think we need to make the transition to really immersing yourself into the people, into the culture. And that is the real joy of travel, that when you move, you should be moved, ideally.
Yeah, that's a wonderful
That's why I
statement.
travel.
When you move, you should be moved. I love
You
that.
should be. I mean, at a level, the best kind of travel is when you come back with more questions than answers, but you're fundamentally changed as a person.
Yeah.
And that's what you should aim for, instead of, like I said, the consumerism, which is like going to a mall and, you've been to a restaurant and you've gone through the menu, so you know the place. No, you don't.
So coming to responsible tourism, do you think what steps, maybe based on your so many years of experience, uh, what could governments or even other tourist bodies can do to promote responsible tourism? Maybe 3 or 5 tips for them.
So look, the most stable structure in the world is not a circle, it's a triangle, right? And I think of it as the three vertices of the triangles, which is the public sector, the government, the private sector, and then us as travelers, because we are obviously voting with our wallet, but we're also voting with our values. So in all three things, the first thing is we have to make a transition from being a bystander to someone who's actively happy to be a confronter. So a bystander is someone says, oh, I'm not sure if this is my battle to pick, if it is the right time. And a confronter is saying, actually, there is a better way of doing this, so I'm going to pick that battle. And that's a transition that you need. But if I go back to the structure of the public sector, the private sector, and the individual traveler, I think the one common thing between all three is leadership. You really need bold leadership. People who are willing to stick their neck out and perhaps be audacious in the ambition that they're fostering with regards to how they see the vision of tourism, and really push the boundaries, rip out the economics as it exists, because there is a better way of doing things, and really chase after it and put money behind it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think everything boils down to leadership.
It does, doesn't it? You're right.
Yeah. And coming to India as a tourist destination, what is your thoughts about that?
Look, it's a tricky one as an Indian origin person. To me, and I've been involved very closely with the G20 this year. I was part of the Women 20, the Empower 20, and the Tourism 20, and I've been back 7 times in the last probably 8 months for different G20 meetings. So this is something which is really intensely close to my heart, and I've advised this to the government as well. There is no reason why a country like India, with the rich resources, culture, history, and everything that we have, only gets about 14.5 million international visitors a year.
Yeah.
London gets 85 million. Paris is at 90. Dubai is at 75, 80. I don't know what the exact number is for 2023. In sharp contrast, there is no excusable reason for a country which is so diverse and rich like India to have so few international travelers and visitors. There are a few things that we really need. And I think the government we have in place at this point in time are really strongly focused on correcting a lot of the wrongs. We need infrastructure. If I have to go to Goa and if I have to fly from London, there is no excuse that I have to go to either somewhere in the Middle East and then fly to Goa, or to go to Bombay or Delhi and then change a plane again. The minute you have...
more hectic.
Correct. It's like pain points. You need to remove the pain points in a traveler's journey so a destination is accessible seamlessly. We have enough pain points in our life. We want to get rid of that when we travel. So don't put in an additional stop. Don't put roads which are not built to standards, so you can't drive and get there, in time. These are roadblocks which kind of really deter you from going to a destination and exploring it. So much of potential, so much potential. I'm very bullish. I think in the next 5-10 years, we're going to see a tourism in India and a growth in Indian tourism, which is going to be unprecedented. Really, really bullish about it.
Thank you for that. So now, okay, let's talk about your upcoming projects and what is your vision about your company and your further career ahead?
Look, I think I'm very, very fortunate, as is everyone else who is working in travel and tourism at this point in time, that we're working in an industry which is growing and which is responsible for, transporting 1.5 billion people, that's 1 in 6 out of us, into some kind of an international destination every year.
Mm.
So this sector is only going to grow. And I again find myself really, really fortunate to be in a position where I am an outsider and an insider at the same time. I call myself some kind of a constructive non-conformist. So I can talk, speak, and write about things which really, really matter, in my opinion, in a very authentic way. And I think it's a great sector for the young generation to join in. It's not hospitality, which is what it used to be 30 years ago, 20 years ago. It's so much more. It's travel, tourism, hospitality, a very, very broad landscape. And I think very exciting for people to join as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So what I'm curious to know is probably some of our audience, especially women out there. What I feel is sometimes, or generally, women leadership, as you know, is it's very, it's very rare, like whichever industry. But in the case of hospitality, we do have a lot of women at the primary level or at the entry level. Maybe they are needed for, carrying flowers to a guest or something. But when it comes to actually being the top where you are today, those kinds of positions are more kept, coveted. So how do women actually aspire to reach those kinds of positions, and how can she actually plan her career to reach such positions?
And it's a pity because we have really more than 50% women in the workforce. So we're very gender diverse as a sector. And again, as you said, in the lower rungs of hierarchy. But unfortunately, as you climb up the ranks, the number of women who are in the C-suite or the boardrooms are only 7%, which is actually rather appalling compared to a lot of other sectors. So we fare poorly compared to banking, telecom, even mining and chemicals, which is rather, dire, given we have 50% women in the workforce, right? So you should see a lot more women going up the ranks. But I guess, listen, my piece of advice would, I guess, just to not lose patience midway and quit.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us do that for different reasons, personal, professional, but just don't quit. And be prepared to aim high, be prepared to rewrite the rules, be prepared to embrace the unknown, and be prepared to persist and persevere, just like the women before you, who are, in a sense, kind of paving the way for you by surmounting unimaginable obstacles so that you may go even further. And I think the other thing I always tell young girls when I speak to them is remember that mistakes are fine. We as women, we're champions at doubting ourselves.
Yeah.
And really, it's not anyone else's job to love you. It's not your bosses, your teams, or your companies, or even your family's job to love you. It's your job to love
Love
yourself. So
yourself.
start there. So the kinder you are to yourself, I think it'll come in the work that you do. You make a mistake, but by definition, you're better off than where you started off. Does that make sense? So because every mistake is either it's a learning or it's a blessing, so you benefit either way. So so just be kinder to yourself, I think.
Yeah.
I always tell people it's easy to say get out of your comfort zone, but it's really a very simple but sound advice. Embrace change, lean into it. If I had done a lot of the things that I ought to have done based on the constructs of society or people, I wouldn't be where I am. It's because I did I have what is called a very lattice career, right? I mean, it's zigzag.
Yeah.
I
I
took
think
those.
most of us have that.
That is exactly what stands you in good stead. So embrace change, lean into it. That doesn't mean that you have to have a plan and get married to it. No, have a plan, hold it loosely, and remember to open your arms, because you know what? You can have it all.
So now that brings me, I know you are a passionate advocate of diversity and equity initiatives. So especially on the tourism and sustainable tourism segment, do you have any specific projects or things that is currently running which you want to showcase on that note?
So I can't speak about a couple of things that we are doing, but I can tell you that over the last 3 years, we've published what is perhaps the most exhaustive study in the travel, tourism, and hospitality sector on women in leadership. So
Wow.
in specific, women in leadership in publicly listed companies, because that's the data which is available out there. It's in the public domain. And it's fascinating to look at that landscape across the travel, tourism, and hospitality landscape, by which I mean not just hotels, but also airlines, cruise or OTAs, and casino companies, or leisure chains, resorts. So all of them. So we quite think it's important, because you have to lead with data, and you need data which is gender segregated, right?
Exactly.
Unless you
Yeah.
have that, you cannot measure to manage. So you need to be able to measure, to be able to manage, and then of course going forward monitor. So that's something that we do. We have a couple of other very interesting projects in the pipeline, uh, in different kinds of media, centered around the topic, but more when it happens.
Yeah, sure.
These
I'm
days.
just keen to know about the report, because the women in leadership, just the topic that we spoke right now, and we already published a report on that. That's wonderful, really. Have you had any instance or any situation where you had to literally fight for getting something done, and you know that it is because you are a female? Can you think of any such instances?
Look, I think if you're a woman leader, I can guarantee you that you've had an instance where you've been undermined, or disrespected, or ridiculed for a variety of reasons. Chandra, it happens to every single one of us. Look, I mean, I go back to what I started with, which is one of the leadership lessons that I have drawn. It doesn't help if you're a 5'3" a petite woman of color,
Exactly.
because that's kind of saying, it comes with a word, oh, ignore me, or walk all over her. But
Yeah.
it's how you deal with it. I have never dealt with it in a way which is restrictive. I go back to being a child of immigrant parents, because you think of it as an opportunity to prove your worth, and you kind of get used to that, and you fight that battle from that perspective, instead of being really I guess not being happy with it. So yeah, if that makes sense. But I also think it's actually very good to be underestimated, because it fires my fire to be underestimated, because you can actually then go ahead and prove someone wrong.
Yeah, it becomes easier.
It's much more fun that way. Uh, but then again, I don't think people do this because they're intentionally bad.
Mm.
I genuinely think there are three kinds of people in the world. And the biggest problem is people who are ignorant. Because there's a big chunk of people, and that's 1/3 of the population. There's a big chunk of people who are actually, who are fine. And there is another chunk of people who are actually massive champions of women. And what we really need to do in life is move people along the scale. So
Correct.
the 1/3 need to come into the middle, where they actually become, active champions of women. And then you have those who are, really, really strong activists, and really care to see women thrive in society and in the workplace. So move people along the scale.
That's wonderful. So, what is feminism according to you then?
Oh, it's not fury, for starters.
Yeah.
I think there is this thing about feminism and fury, and no, you don't have to be angry, to get things done. I say I'm a middle child.
Hmm.
And I always give this example, because by definition, I learned very early on to manage up and down. And feminism is like that for me. You need to manage up and down. Isn't
Correct.
that what bringing credibility to work is? You manage your clients, you manage your peers, you manage up and down, and do it in a way where you take people along with you. And as long as you do that, where everyone has a voice, where you feel confident enough to say what you want to say, uh, that is feminism. Look, I mean, I'm a working mother. Choices that I made in life, which I think have been instrumental in my career. I'll give you one example, right? And some people say that's feminism, but it depends. I decided to get back to work, and work through my two. The birth of my two kids. I could have chosen to prioritize by sitting at home. Well, some people choose to, it's prioritizing family or not. But I am a better mother if I'm working.
Yeah.
So for me, that was the feminist choice, if that makes sense. Having said that, true feminism is true choice. So if there is someone who wants to be a stay-at-home mother because that is their choice, I applaud that. And I respect that fully because, like I said, true feminism is choice. I wanted to work. Being a lady who lunches is not my gig. I'm just happier working. But I have full respect for people who choose to be stay-at-home mothers. I mean, hats off to them. It's a very, very tough job.
Exactly.
I
Same thing. I mean, I think we are similar on that decision to actually continue the job. However, let me also tell you know that especially in India, not just in India, in fact, recently I've been talking about this in other global women communities over here,
Yeah.
and I find that many women are forced into quitting their jobs, and it is not a choice. It is because there is no other choice.
It's about any woman having to make the choice
Right.
between having a career or having a family and having to choose one of the two. That is the problem.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, exactly as you said, right? So I think that's what we need to get rid of. And then you choose what you want.
Yeah, that brings me. Did you watch the movie Barbie? And what is your interest of? I mean, what is your impression about that?
I haven't watched the movie, but I have played with Barbie growing up, and I think absolutely fascinating, right? I mean, in a sense, women are awakening. One of the beauty of the movies, I mean, apart from the fact that it's done over $1 billion of business, or that it's actually helmed by a woman director, but I think it is actually a sign of the changing times that we live in, because the society, or at least the women, by and large, are awakening that it's okay to question the status quo, or there is another way of doing things, and it's okay to express that as well.
Right. Yeah. I can sense the power and the conviction in your voice while you say all of this, because I'm sure you, as as you earlier stated, a brown woman coming into a new place and also working in different countries would have definitely faced different kinds of barriers. And I'm sure you've gained that confidence and courage to actually put your foot down and, make an impact. And that's what made you the 100 most influential women in the segment, and really we are proud of you. So I'm curious to know, like, you have traveled so many different countries. How many languages do you speak? Did you try to learn any new?
No, but again, go back to India, right? I don't know if you grew up in India. An average Indian speaks 3. I speak 5 because I'm moved around quite a bit. So 6 overall. I'd love to pick up a couple of other languages. It's in the works, hopefully someday.
That's wonderful. Which are those 6, by the way?
So Malayalam, which is my mother tongue, English, Hindi, obviously, Urdu, passable French, Punjabi. I grew up in Delhi. So yeah.
That's good. That's good. Wonderful. So yeah, so that brings me to the, I mean, we are out of time. So I'm just taking you to a quick rapid fire round. Are you ready for that?
Yes.
Okay, so here we go. You have traveled so many different places. So what's your favorite destination?
I think there's no place like Galapagos anywhere in the world. I mean, it's enough to see human beings who are so weird and different, but to see animals who, animals that are completely different. I think Galapagos it's a very, very, very special place.
Next question. So what's your favorite city then?
Uh, so I might just go with London for a variety of reasons. It's the one city where I have lived the longest of any city in the world, 15, 16 years. It's the longest I've lived in any city. I love the fact that I'm walking the streets and I can hear 20 different languages. So you could be, it's like you could be anywhere in the world. In London, it's wonderful. It's properly diverse. It's a potpourri of different cultures. It's very outdoorsy. It's very green. My kids were born here, so it's emotional. I'm a nomad at heart. If I didn't have kids, I would pack my bags and leave in a jiffy. But kind of when you have kids, you grow roots in a sense, right? So from that perspective, London is home.
Excellent. So what's your favorite book?
Oh, again, I can tell you books. Oh, again, there's so many that have changed me or impacted me. Can I just pick Cradle to Cradle? It's written by a friend, William McDonough, Bill McDonough. I have never seen a book which is made of plastic. I can read it in the pool.
That's interesting.
But I think it's it's fantastic in how he has pushed boundaries. It's one of those books which finds place in Oxford at the library amongst the 20 books that have changed a generation, next to The Origin of Species. So there you go. Have to read it. Cradle
Right.
to Cradle.
Who is your favorite woman leader, maybe contemporary or past?
Women for different reasons. I love what Michelle Obama has done. I think she's a Democrat who will get elected as president if she stands. But I think she's really purpose
Definitely
driven,
brilliant.
has used the platform to really do good for humanity, and I really, really appreciate.
Now, what's your favorite hobby, if you have any?
Oh, I have been an obsessive traveler most of my life.
Mhm.
I think it's my one true love, and my only addiction in life.
Okay.
So travel.
Okay, cool. And your daily routine, like I know traveling means there is no specific routine, but still, when you are not traveling, do you have any daily routine?
Very
The
simple,
daily
actually.
life.
I'm an early riser, so I'm up at 5:30, and I'm a very boring person. I go to bed at 9:30, 10, never later. If I'm home, that is. My me time is in a plane. I know it just sounds ridiculous, or it sounds like a bad joke, but I'm not the crazy person who watches 3 movies back to back in a plane. Wi-Fi is iffy in a plane. So I actually do my best reading, thinking, and writing in a plane. It's my me time.
One thing you wish you want to change in this world?
Yeah, you know what? I think one thing which would make a huge amount of difference
Mhm.
is where we all step up and assume responsibility for what each one of us can do. And it goes back to being a confronter and not a bystander. A bystander is someone who would say, is it the time to question it? Is it my job? Is it not better left unsaid, untouched? I say, let us all become confrontational. I don't mean that in an aggressive, pick up a fight sense of the word, but I mean it in a sense, let's take the responsibility for what we all can change and impact, because it's a hell of a lot when it comes down to that. And let's not stop doing things because you might ruffle feathers or whatever. I mean, I'm here to do my job as a you. We're not here to win Miss Congeniality, right? That's for Sandra Bullock to do. So let's not worry about playing nice. It's just about you can do it. You can make a difference. You have the power within you. So I hope more of us do that.
It's wonderful closing note, I would say. Each of us have the power within us, and you can do it. And yes, we are in for that. I wish you all the success for your bigger dreams ahead in your career, as well as in your personal life and whatever you want to impact in your life. Aradhana, it has been a wonderful conversation. I'm sure our audience would have enjoyed this conversation and learned a lot. Any last one piece of point which you want to share?
No, just let it rip. This has been an utter delight, Chandra. Thank you for having me. Keep kicking ass in Stanford, in San Francisco. I will check in on you the next time I'm in town.
Sure. Thank you so much, Aradhana, once again. And with that, we conclude this episode of She Side Podcast. And this is a special episode called She Tycoon, where we feature wonderful women leaders, especially entrepreneurs and bosses around the world. Saying bye-bye is Aradhana Khowala.